Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, Scottish business, the trade unions, the educational sector and every political party in the Scottish Parliament, including the Conservative and Unionist Party, agree that Scotland needs a return of the post-study route to allow talented students to remain and contribute to the Scottish economy. Similar views are shared by the APPG on migration, the Home Affairs Committee, the Scottish Affairs Select Committee, the House of Lords Science and Technology Committee and the Coal Commission on UK exports. Can the Home Secretary explain which organisations advised against the return of this scheme, and indeed were there any at all who gave such advice?
Well, I would say to the Honourable and Learned Lady that we think we've got the right balance in terms of welcoming students, the brightest and the best, to this country and allowing them to stay where they can get a graduate level job. We have to ensure that that system is fair to attracting the people to some of our best universities and doesn't allow people to overstay where they don't have graduate-related jobs. So I hope she will indulge me if I will then write to her further about the particular question she has about the advice that we received.
Cherry.
Very interested to know what advice was received, but the truth of the matter, Mr Speaker, is that compared to countries such as Canada and New Zealand, what the UK government is offering students in Scotland is pathetic. Isn't the real reason the Home Office is picking on our universities in Scotland is because of the Prime Minister's blinkered pursuit of her unrealistic net migration target? And isn't it time to remove students from that target and recognise that one-size-fits-all immigration policies are neither necessary or desirable for Scotland and indeed the rest of the UK?
I don't share the Honourable Lady's view. I think our figures are pretty clear. When we talk about net immigration figures, they are, of course, taking account of students coming in and students coming out. So I think we have the right way of measuring the amount of students that come in, and I don't think it does inhibit our appeal to international students, because the fact is they do want to come and study here in the UK. The UK has 2 of the top 10 universities in the world, and long may that continue.
In what many see as a blow to the government's Prevent scheme, the Muslim Council of Britain have announced that they will be setting up their own anti-radicalisation programme. The Home Secretary appears to be losing the confidence of Muslims. What is she intending to do to reverse this loss of trust?
I thank the Honourable Labour for the question. She is, of course, absolutely wrong that the Prevent programme set up by her government in 2003 has actually made some considerable successes throughout the communities. And I think we should reflect what Prevent is about safeguarding vulnerable people to being exploited and saving many people's lives across the country and abroad. And I think to repeat the echo chamber of people saying that this is about targeting one group or the other is an absolute fallacy.
Dungavel detention centres should close, but only as part of a wider plan to reduce use of detention. Isn't the Minister embarrassed to be presiding over one of the most bloated detention estates in the EU and the only one without a fixed time limit?
Well, pre-departure detention is always a last resort, and we do aim to minimise the number of those kept in detention. The new facility at Glasgow Airport will facilitate the closure of Dungavel and be a more purpose-built facility.
Mr Speaker, can the Home Secretary confirm that she is publishing new guidance on immigration and asylum claims from Eritrea today? And in future, will the Home Office listen to concerns about human rights abuses in countries of origin that are raised in this House, rather than being forced into policy change by the Immigration Tribunal?
Well, it is certainly important that with Eritrea, as with other countries, we act on the best possible information. Home Office officials have been in country, and there's been reports produced by other EU countries which we look at. But certainly we are looking with the results of the tribunal with interest.
Mr Speaker, with around 80% of trusts in deficit and only about 4% meeting A&E targets, I am grateful for the Health and Select Committee for flagging up the dire financial state of the NHS in England, as evidenced by their letter to the Chancellor. We learn from this document that the 10 billion figure is in fact a bit of a fallacy. In Scotland, the SNP government are committed to investing an additional £2 billion by 2021, but any reduction in new money for the NHS from the UK government would impact on Barnett consequentials. And given the UK Government have already slashed Scotland's budget by 10% between 2010 and 2020, the UK Government needs to be honest and transparent about what this means for Scotland's funding. With the Department of Health having accidentally not adjusted its books for an extra £417 million from the NI contributions and having broke the Department of Health control total by £207 million, will the devolved governments get any share of this additional £624 million?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I think many people in Scotland will be somewhat surprised by the honourable gentleman's comments, because in the last Parliament, spending on the NHS in England went up by 4%, whereas in Scotland it went down by 1%. The IFS, in fact, confirmed at the time of the independence referendum, they said it seems that historically, at least, Scottish governments in Holyrood have placed less priority on funding the NHS in Scotland than governments in Westminster have for England. And this Parliament, the party he supports, has already lost a vote on NHS cuts in the Scottish Parliament and been criticised by Audit Scotland for its performance. So I just say that when the SNP has the courage to increase NHS spending in Scotland by the amount we are increasing it in England, then of course we will listen. But until then, I think they should concentrate on looking after Scottish NHS patients in Scotland.
Mr Speaker, can I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of his statement. I'm very glad that at last this long-awaited Green Paper is being published, and I broadly welcome the Government's commitment to reform, to more personalised support and to consult widely with disabled people, carers and those who represent them. And can I say we will work constructively with all parties to deliver real progress for disabled people. But we need actions, not just words. The truth is that the burden of austerity that's fallen on sick and disabled people in recent years has caused severe hardship and pushed many people further away from the workplace. Sick and disabled people have been disproportionately sanctioned in the benefits system. Sick and disabled people have been disproportionately hit by the bedroom tax. The raising of the bar on personal independence payments has seen thousands of sick and disabled people losing their mobility vehicles, in many cases their only means of getting to and from work. And from next April, sick and disabled people with long-term conditions will be deterred from going back to work, because if they do and then they have a relapse and have to go back on ESA, they will find their income cut by £30 a week. And, Mr Speaker, far too many people who are manifestly too sick to work are still being found fit for work. Earlier this year, the Government cut the budget for its work programme from £2 billion to £130 million. Given its poor performance, I can understand why. But we know from more successful schemes to support disabled people into work, schemes like Access to Work or voluntary sector initiatives like Action on Hearing Losses Moving On programme, that tailored personalised support doesn't come cheap. What additional budget does the Secretary of State envisage will be attached to the Government's proposals? What discussions has he had with the Treasury ahead of the autumn? Will there be Barnett consequentials for Scotland? I also want to ask the Secretary of State about support for employers. To date, efforts have focused on improving employers' confidence, which is fine as far as it goes, but can be fairly nebulous if there are no practical resources to back it up. Employers need concrete support to make this work. Will there be resources attached to the rhetoric this time around? And finally, can I plead with the Secretary of State to hold off the impending cuts to the ESA RAG until such time as the Government has got this right?
Well, I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady for her general welcome for the appearance of the Green Paper and for her commitment to work constructively on it. Indeed, my honourable friend, the Minister for Disabled People, Health and Work, was in Scotland last week discussing with counterparts there what needs to be done, and I will be there, as you may know, later this week to talk to the Social Security Committee. She made the point about resources. I'm able to tell her that there will be additional support for new claimants with limited capability for work. It will be £60 million next year, rising to £100 million a year by 2020. There will be new money for the third sector, something like £50 million by Christmas of this year. And also, she makes a very good point about employers, and I agree with her that we need to have more than rhetoric. That's why we'll be rolling out a small employer offer that will support the creation of more job opportunities for disabled people, will provide support for employers and enable employers to apply for a payment of £500 after 3 months' employment to provide ongoing support. I think it's that kind of practical help, particularly for small businesses, that will transform matters for very many people. We know that small businesses are the biggest creators of jobs in this country, and absolutely we want them to participate in being able to use this great talent pool that is out there of people with disabilities whose employment is much less than those without disabilities.
I welcome the Green Paper in its broadest sense, if we can have a dialogue about how we can improve the life of disabled people. As the point has just been made, you need to make sure that the funding is there on the table in order to protect people back into work and those that need support. Perhaps there are two words which are missing from the document today, from the Minister's statement, and that is compassion and dignity. Let's hope that we get that in the response from the Government.
Well, I completely agree with the honourable gentleman. I'm grateful for his general support, and I absolutely agree with him that the system, if you like, should show compassion at all times, and that those who deal with the system should feel that they're being dealt with dignity, and that their own dignity is being preserved. We are at one on that.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and can I too thank the Secretary of State for his statement. I would perhaps note that I think he may have said a little bit more to the BBC yesterday than he has to the House today. I hope he's not joining the ever-growing list of Secretaries of State who have been slapped down by the Prime Minister for expressing their personal opinions in terms of this. But I would welcome this. I do think it's important that action has been taken to protect parts of the economy from the potential negative impacts that can be caused by Brexit. Perhaps it's more than just a quarter of the issues that were on Nissan's agenda, but that's for the Secretary of State to answer. But he said to the BBC yesterday that our objective would be to have continued access without tariff or bureaucratic impediments. Now, that's not been said today, but I think that's correct. But if that objective is not realised, what will the cost be to the taxpayer in terms of a deal with Nissan? How much will it cost to make good those tariffs should they be imposed? That is the key question in terms of this. But members on these benches will welcome the fact that an area of the country that voted overwhelmingly to leave the European Union has been given a special deal. And we look forward with great gusto to the deal that will be given to Scotland in recognition of the fact that we overwhelmingly voted to remain in the European Union. The Government is giving a flexible Brexit to the City of London and to the North East of England. I hope he will bring forward a flexible Brexit to protect Scotland's economy and the 80,000 jobs that rely on our access to the single market. The Secretary of State must recognise that the game's a bit of a bogey here. Brexit means Brexit will not cut it, whilst he is going behind closed doors, cutting deals with others, without making this House or the public aware of what that is. While Nissan received a letter of comfort, the devolved administration's got a hotline that is indeed so hot to handle that it doesn't get answered for 36 hours.
I'm sorry, but we must press on. Secretary of State. It started well, Mr Speaker, although I certainly haven't been slapped down, up, sideways or anything by the Prime Minister, I'm pleased to say. The approach that I set out to the House and previously is simply to reflect, I would have thought, what is common sense, that in an area, and we've been talking about the automotive sector, in which there are substantial exports that come from Britain to the European Union. There are substantial exports from the European Union to this country. Components go backwards and forwards. That seems to me a clear common interest in having arrangements that are free of tariffs and free of the bureaucratic impediments that I mentioned. And so it seems to me that when you embark on your negotiations, any negotiation, it's about finding the common ground and having a positive volition so to do. That is what I set out. That is what I described to Nissan and indeed to any other manufacturer. And it's on that basis, amongst the other points that I made, that they felt able to make this fantastic investment, not only in the North East but into the United Kingdom.
Tasmina Ahmed-Sheikh.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Secretary of State confirm whether the arrangement with Nissan is a one-off or part of a wider strategy to protect the economy from the impact of Brexit? And if it is part of a wider strategy, Can the Secretary of State confirm what other organisations he's spoken with over the past few months on similar terms?
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's certainly part of a strategy. It's part of our industrial strategy to make sure that we Britain is competitive in the future as it is now and it has been in the past. It is a very strategic approach that we're saying. I meet, as the Honourable Lady might imagine, businesses large and small almost every day of the week, and in all of the conversations that I have, we discuss what is important, what are the challenges they face, what is their strategic ambition, so that I can be informed about that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, universities in Scotland have warned of an exodus of talent if we don't have a long-term future plan for EU nationals. So what confirmation can he give that EU nationals will have a long-term future in this country?
Well, I think, as the honourable gentleman knows, there'll be lots of opportunities to discuss other aspects of the negotiations that we'll have. I think there's even a debate next week on these matters.
Ian Blackford.
Mr Speaker, we know that there are attempts to do a deal for the City of London. We now know there's a deal for Nissan. But at the same time, the Fraser of Arundel tell us there's a threat to 80,000 jobs in Scotland. Why is it that when our First Minister comes down here, she's shown the door? There's a deal for Nissan, but there's no deal for Scotland from this government.
I've had the pleasure of meeting the First Minister at least twice since I have taken up this job, and what I've said to her personally and directly is that as we develop our industrial strategy, Scotland has a big place in that. Of course, it's important that all parts of the United Kingdom need to benefit from our industrial success in the future. And he may know that through the city deals that have been negotiated between the UK government, the Scottish government and the various councils, we have, and I personally have, I think he would acknowledge, a track record in making those discussions work.
In his statement, the Secretary of State said that employees of Nissan can look forward to careers filled with opportunity and success, yet millions of young people across the UK are now looking at futures with significantly reduced opportunities as a result of Brexit. What reassurance can the government give to young people about what it will be doing to protect their futures?
Well, Mr. Speaker, what I would say is that we've been discussing here a fantastic new investment that is not only going to safeguard jobs in Nissan and across the country through the supply chain, but no doubt, especially with this more of the supply chain coming to locate in the United Kingdom, is going to create new opportunities. They will be for young people right across the country. There will be apprenticeships, there will be traineeships, there will be careers that will be available that would not have happened if we hadn't secured this investment. So I think you should welcome it.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, I welcome the news that so many jobs in Sunderland will be protected from the consequences of Brexit. But as an Edinburgh MP, it's Edinburgh jobs I have to think about. Many thousands of my constituents are employed directly or indirectly in Edinburgh's financial sector, and Edinburgh's economy is more reliant on financial services than any other city in the UK, including London. These people are worried about the consequences of losing their EU passport. Will the Minister guarantee me that he will advocate for a special deal for Edinburgh in Cabinet?
Well, Mr Speaker, what I would say is that, of course, financial services is of huge importance to our economy, to the UK economy and to the economy in Edinburgh. We need to make sure that in all areas we get the best possible deal by finding the areas of common ground, negotiating in a way that is constructive through relationships that we've built up with our counterparts in the European Union during the months and years ahead. That is the approach that we will take, and I think that is the approach that is most likely to succeed.
Grady. Thank you, Mr Speaker. How many of these unique one-off special individual deals are going to have to be negotiated before the Brexit process is complete? And how many will it take before the government realises that the better option for everyone would be to live up to its manifesto promise and keep us in the single market?
It wasn't clear from the honourable gentleman's remarks whether he welcomes this deal or not. But I think it has been a good conclusion to discussions that we've had with Nissan. What I would say to honourable members on all sides of the House that I think if all of us approach the prospect of investment either by domestic companies or overseas investors in a positive way, we try to understand what they need and to make sure that the economy provides the backdrop, whether it's in skills, whether it's in infrastructure, whether it's in research and development, to keep us competitive, then we can all prosper together.
Order.